Hello BookTube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reviews for November the 24th through the 30th. So I had a good reading week this week. I finished 6 books. I did finish all of my challenges for the month of November, but I did not necessarily read every book that I intended to read for November, and that's fine. I actually should have had a couple extra books, or at least one extra book done this week, but Saturdays, for some reason, like the last day of the month, yesterday of course was Saturday, it was the 30th of November, I had planned on starting and finishing a novella, but that didn't happen. For some reason, Saturdays are slower reading days for me. I don't understand why, but regardless, I'm still really happy with the 6 books. And yeah, so I will be doing my month end wrap up coming later this week on Thursday, and you guys will hear all the stats and everything like that of what I actually got done. All my challenges got completed, but I didn't read necessarily everything that I had on my TBR, and that's fine, because my TBR is more of a a goal, a suggestion. It is subject to change, as I like to say. But anyway, let's get into the books that I finished this week. So the first one that I read was The Princess Plan by Julia London. This is, of course, a historical romance novel. The narrator was Justin Hill. This is book number 1 in the Royal Wedding series. The publication date was 2019. This was an ARC copy that I had. It came out in November. Goodreads average rating of 3.91 stars. I gave it 3.5 stars. And of course, special thanks to NetGalley and the publisher Harlequin for sending me an e-ARC copy of this book to review, but I did get a copy on audio to listen to. So to start off with, this one, if you could not tell from the cover, and I know when I mentioned this in my Friday reads, a lot of people said they got those vibes from it. This was very much a Cinderella retelling. It was really cute. It wasn't spectacular. I didn't absolutely love it, but it was delightful enough. Our main characters are, sorry, I'm just looking here, Eliza and Sebastian. And, you know, they meet at a masquerade party, and he is a prince to some, you know, made up foreign country, and he is in London looking for a bride. I believe it takes place actually in Victorian times, not Regency, because Queen Victoria is mentioned a number of times throughout the story. And these two don't necessarily get along at the beginning. She is the daughter of a lawyer, so they're, I mean, upper middle class, but they're not part of the nobility or anything like that. Of course, they begin a relationship at some point in the book. There's also a mystery aspect of it, where one of the men, who is actually Sebastian's very good friend, along with his, what's the word I'm looking for? His secretary, if you will, he ends up getting killed, and, you know, they're trying to find out the whodunit, so there's a great mystery aspect to it. Again, it didn't absolutely blow me away, but it was a really delightful read. If you are into, you know, fairy tale retellings, this is definitely one that I suggest that you check out. You meet a couple other characters in this story, Eliza's best friend as well as her sister, and I believe that they are going to have their own books later on, because like I said, this is the first in a series. So yeah, I mean, if you like historical romance and you like retellings, definitely check it out. See if your library has it or what have you. It was really great on audio. I think the narrator did a really great job on it, and yeah, I liked it. I just didn't love it. The next one that I finished, I did really enjoy, and this was The Hope by Patricia Davis. This is an Amish romance, if you couldn't tell from the cover. Book number 2 in the Amish of Cedar Grove series. This was also published in 2019. It also came out in November. Goodreads average rating of 4.33 stars. I gave this one 4 stars. So this is the story of Ruth and Owen. Oh, and this one, special thanks also to NetGalley and the publisher Harlequin for sending me an e-ARC copy of this one to review for you guys. So this one was really cute. You know, the more I read the Amish romances, the more I'm actually really enjoying them. Because surprisingly, at least some of the ones that I've read, they're not as, I mean, they are really rooted in faith, because that is the Amish. That is what they are. They're not just people who choose to live off the grid and, you know, don't have electricity and things like that. You know, it's very much their faith. And, you know, a lot of the story is that God will provide. This is all in God's plan. You know, a lot of that woven throughout the story, but regardless of your personal religious beliefs, you know, you can still just if it's not your personal religious beliefs, you just kind of take it with a grain of salt and just, continue reading the story. So, like I said, this is the story of Ruth and Owen. And what I really liked about this one was the fact that both of them were older. Ruth has grown children. Her daughter is just gotten married. But she's a widow. Her husband passed like 4 or 5 years earlier. And Owen is actually her husband's cousin. And they've never gotten along. Owen just kind of packs up and leaves. He travels quite a bit. He is Amish, but he kind of moves from town to town. And the reason for that is because when he was young, his parents were killed. And him and his younger sister were separated. The sister was taken by their aunt and raised in many different places. She moved around a lot too. So Owen has spent all these years looking for his sister. And that is kind of the core of this story, is not only the relationship between Ruth and Owen, but also Owen looking for his sister. So at the beginning of the story, Owen is in the town of Cedar Grove, this Amish community, to help Ruth out because her daughter is leaving. She's just got married, so she's kind of going on her honeymoon trip, if you will. And her younger brother, Ruth's son, is also going with them because he wants to experience more of the world and more of the communities in there. Not more of the world, not like they're traveling to Europe, but they're going to different Amish communities in and around the surrounding area, like a few days travel and things like that. So Ruth's going to need someone to help her out on the farm. So Owen comes to help, to stay for a month or so to help out, and he's staying in the farm next door. So one night during a bad snowstorm, Owen heads back to the farm that he's staying at and finds a 3-year-old little girl. And she looks like she's been abandoned. She's a little Amish girl. So the mystery aspect of this one, because there is one also along with the romance, is them trying to find out who this little girl is. And it was delightful. This story was so good. The mystery aspect of it, I kind of had it figured out, but it was nice watching it play out. Like, there wasn't a big mystery aspect in that point where, oh my gosh, who's this little girl? You kind of know who she is, but it's it was really, really good watching the characters try and work their way through it. And again, I just love the Amish books because I love seeing the culture. I just think it's so interesting, watching the culture and how they interact and what they do and what their celebrations are like. The wedding and a funeral and things like that. That culture aspect of it is really, really interesting to me. So I absolutely recommend this one. Obviously, it's a clean romance. I mean, the most you're going to get is a kiss and some hand-holding. Utterly delightful. Patricia Davis, I have not read her before. And like I said, this is the second book in the series, but you can absolutely go in and read it without reading the first one because I hadn't. And you would not be lost for anything. But I do want to go back now and definitely read the first book in the series. The next one that I finished, oh gosh, you guys, I really enjoyed this one, was Ungovernable. The Victorian Parent's Guide to Raising Flawless Children by Therese Oneill. This one is a nonfiction history novel. It was narrated. I did listen to it on audio. I had planned on reading this physical copy, but I did end up grabbing it on audio, by Dara Rosenberg and Betsy Ford's Miriam. This was also published this year in 2019. This was not an art copy or anything like that. Goodreads average rating of 3.56 stars. I gave this one 4 stars. This was for one of my challenges of Nonfiction November, which was to read, and this was for the prompt of sport, whereas raising children is a sport. That's how I fit it into the challenge. So yes, I read this author's first book called Unmentionable 2 or 3 years ago for Nonfiction November and loved it. I gave it a 5-star. This one got a 4-star. It was not nearly as good as the first one, as Unmentionable, but it was still highly, highly enjoyable. There were some great laugh out loud moments in this. It's really written very tongue-in-cheek. On audio, I think it works very, very well. I was reading reviews after I finished reading this on Goodreads, and some people were complaining about the format of the book because the book is formatted in, where can I show you guys here? There's a lot of pictures in here. Okay. It's formatted in a question and answer, so you can see the more bold, and it has a Q beside it for the question, and then the narrator giving the answer. So that's why there's 2 narrators. And I think that worked really well on audio, and perhaps maybe it just works better on audio in that kind of a format. Because you're getting the two distinct voices, and I do like that they had two different narrators for that, so you're not getting confused. If you hear the voice of one, you know it's the question or the answer. But still, really, really fun. Like I said, some great laugh out loud moments in this. There was one, and some of the things that really made me think, even though I'm not a parent per se, no, I'm not a parent at all, that I have cats, and I keep them alive, so bonus. But the whole fact of raising children and how times have changed and how the person, like the character, if you will, in this nonfiction work, who is asking these questions is very much that helicopter granola, and I'm not throwing shade on anyone for this, but that kind of a parent, I think we're all familiar with it. The kind of parents like, oh, well, my child would never do that. Yes, they will do that. I hate to break it to you. Best of intentions don't always work, and I know that enough of that when it comes to kids. But there was one section in this book that I was talking to my mom about, and it's how back then, and the person asking the questions in this, there's no names, they're not characters, it's just that kind of a narration, is commenting about how way back in Victorian times, the women drank a lot of alcohol. And, the person who was answering the questions in this was pretty much stating, like, she wasn't saying, like, nowadays there's very much a stigma against that. If you're somewhere and there's a pregnant woman, having a sip of wine or something like that at, like, perhaps a New Year's celebration or somebody's birthday, that person gets stink eye big time. And, I know I've had friends who have had babies and, oh my gosh, I cannot wait till, I've had this baby so I can have something to drink and blah, blah, blah. And how back then it was commonplace, but yet the kids were still born healthy, and how the author talks about that in this book. And I found it the most interesting, because as they stated, back in Victorian times, it was the water that you couldn't guarantee. You didn't know where that source of water was coming from. You didn't know how polluted it was. Whereas beer or spirits were fermented. So you knew that they had gone through several processes to clean the water that's used in beer or spirits, and how it was more commonplace for them to actually drink. Now, they're not saying, be a lush, and that's perfectly acceptable. I mean, an alcoholic is different than having a glass of wine with dinner or something like that. And I'm not saying, and same as in the book, it says it, I'm not encouraging you to go out and do that. But it was just very, very interesting hearing the history and, how things have changed and how our water now, for the most part, is, perfectly clean and drinkable, and how that's what we should be drinking, whereas back then it was different. You know what I mean? And it was just interesting hearing a lot of the things on, how children were dressed and the kind of games that they played, and how there was very much a division between boys and girls. And, that there were specific games for boys and specific games for girls. Girls didn't play rough and tumble. Girls did more things like, their games consisted more of learning a skill, like sewing or painting or music or what have you, depending on what class you were in. If you were of someone who worked on a farm, then that was your life and that's what you did. It was really, really interesting. Again, it didn't hit as well for me as Unmentionable did, but it was still highly enjoyable. If you enjoy nonfiction history and you're, into the Victorian era, I highly recommend this author's work. Start with Unmentionable, The Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex and Marriage, or something like that. I can't remember the full title. And then maybe move on to this one. I think also the reason this one might not have hit as hard for me is because I'm not a parent. So I could not empathize with some of the struggles, that a parent would go through. But still really, really enjoyable, and I'm glad I have a copy of it. And you know what? Yes, I did listen to it on audio, and I felt that it worked well on audio with the question and answer, but there are a lot of pictures in this, you guys. So maybe what I would recommend is listening to it on audio, but having a physical or a digital copy that you can look through. Now, my audio copy that I got from Audible, I did buy a copy, actually had a PDF version that went with it, which I think is what had all the pictures and stuff. So I'm not 100% certain because I didn't open that because I had this copy. But yeah, still really, really enjoyable, and I liked it a lot. The next book that I finished was Then Came You by Jill Shalvis. This is a contemporary romance novel, narrated on audio by the great Karen White. She is still a favorite narrator of mine. This is book number 5 in the Animal Magnetism series. This book was originally published in 2014. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.16 stars. I gave this one, excuse me, I've got the hiccups. I gave this one 4 stars. For my challenge, this was for my RRC for challenge number 7, which was Operating Nurse Day, which was to read a story that had something or someone in the medical field. And both of our main characters, Emily and Wyatt, are both veterinarians. Veterinarians. I couldn't remember the word. I wanted to say veterans, but they're not. That's something completely different. That is someone who served in the war, or in the army, or in the military. So anyway, this one was really delightful. I mean, I love Jill Shalvis's writing. I gave this one 4 stars, like I said. It wasn't my favorite in the series, but it was still really enjoyable. So, like I said, the story of Emily and Wyatt. And Emily is newly out of vet school, and she has taken this internship in Sunshine, Idaho, which is where this series takes place. And she is going to be working with Wyatt. But right at the beginning, you find out that, of course, her and Wyatt have a history. Of all the veterinary practices in all the land, she had to end up at his, kind of an idea. They were at a vet conference together in Reno, Nevada, months earlier, and ended up having a one-night stand, thinking they were never going to see each other again. And then, lo and behold, she shows up at his tiny little, speck on a map town in Idaho, working as an intern at his vet practice, and the story goes from there. I really enjoyed this one. There's a lot of baggage for both of them to unpack. He had a pretty difficult childhood moving around with his parents and wanted to be stable. Emily is from Los Angeles, and she had originally, when she put in for these internships, she had hoped to get this one in Beverly Hills, but ended up getting the one in Idaho. So she's right at the beginning, she's counting down to how long she has to be there for. 352 days, 351 days, and what have you. And her sister has come with her. Their father still lives in Los Angeles, and her sister's name is Sarah, and I think she's younger. And she's dealing with a breakup as well with her girlfriend. So, there's kind of a lot. And then Wyatt's got his 2 sisters, an older sister and a younger sister. Now, I'm trying to remember, because this sounds bad, but a lot of these small town romance series, I kind of get confused about what happened in previous books, which is why I get why a lot of people will read a series completely one after another. I can't do that. I would get bored by like the 2nd or 3rd book, and I would need a break. I would need something different. But I'm pretty sure Darcy, which is Wyatt's younger sister, was involved in a car accident in like book 2, 3, or 4. I can't remember which one. She was a secondary character. Well, she's healing now from that accident, and her story is going to be next with her not personal trainer, but her physiotherapist. I think that's who she's going to be having a relationship with. So I'm very much looking forward to that one. This is great classic Jill Shalvis. She has great banter between characters. She really paints this town as this great town. All the characters have great personalities. You really get to know all of them. The animals, because these do take place, the whole Animal Magnetism series takes place in a vet's clinic. So you are getting all of these animals. Oh, and there's also this underlying kind of mystery aspect with these dogs. That's all I'm going to tell you. Again, it's one of those things that when it kind of starts to come to light, I'm like, I know exactly what this is, and it's going to be hard to listen to. And it was. I have to admit, driving home from work on, what night was I listening to this? Thursday or Friday. I actually started to cry a little bit at something that was going on. It was very, very sad. It deals with death of an animal in a very brutal way. But it's written very well. And, I'm glad it had the conclusion that it had. Again, it wasn't a mystery. You kind of figure it out, and you kind of know well before the characters do what's going on. Because all the clues are kind of there, and you can probably piece it together for yourself. But still really, really good. I highly enjoy this series, and I absolutely recommend it. I believe this entire series is available on the Audible Escape package if you're interested in listening to it there. Next up, we have Summer Escape with the Tycoon by Donna Alward. I don't have my copy right here to show to you guys, but of course the picture will be here. This is a contemporary romance novel. It is book number 1 in the Destination Bride series. Harlequin romance number 4668. This was published in 2019. Average rating on Goodreads of 4.32 stars. I gave this one 3.5 stars, higher on the 3.5 star rating. For my challenges, this was part of my 40 Years of Harlequin. This is one of the books that you guys picked me, so thank you very, very much for picking a good one. And for my Triple RC, I ended up using this one for number 4, which was Book Lovers Day, which is the couple has to be embracing on the cover. Close enough. Originally, I was going to use the book Stealing Her by Rachel Van Dyken, but if you guys remember I think it was last week I talked about it, I DNF'd that book because I didn't like it. So I needed something else to fit that prompt, and this one worked. So this one was really adorable. It takes place in Canada on the West Coast, and it's about a woman by the name of Molly and a guy by the name of Eric. And they're at this same function in Massachusetts, somewhere I think in Boston area, and they both end up bidding on this silent auction destination, once in a lifetime trip kind of an idea, and Molly outbids him. Well, he decides he wants to take this trip anyway, so he ends up booking it too, and they end up going on the trip together at the same time. There's multiple times you could have gone on this trip, but they ended up, of course, the way fate works, is taking this trip at the same time. And it's one that goes up the West Coast, like in British Columbia, and they go whale watching and kayaking and camping and ziplining and all these things. So at first they don't like each other at all. It's very, very much a hate to love romance. And they end up, of course, spending more and more time together because they are the only two on the trip who are not coupled up. You know, everybody else is there with their spouse or significant other or what have you, or friend or sister or whatever. And they are the only two not with another person. So they end up kind of getting thrown together a lot. And it was a really cute story. He is originally from Montreal, and she is from the Massachusetts, somewhere in the Boston area. So it would be a long-distance relationship, and then, of course, something happens towards the end of the book that they end up breaking up, even though they were going to try the long-distance thing, because a relationship kind of blooms over the 2 weeks that they're together. This is, in a way, a clean romance. Stuff does happen, but it's all behind closed doors, so you're not getting any of those adult scenes. Everything is implied. So do keep that in mind if you wanted to read this one. But it was really, really cute, with it taking place in Canada and stuff like that. And I know the West Coast would be a very popular area for this kind of a tourist kind of group thing to do. And it was kind of nice to experience the West Coast in that aspect. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. I mean, like I said, 3.5 stars, but closer to 4, but it didn't quite hit the 4-star mark for me, but still absolutely enjoyable, and I highly recommend it. And the last book that I finished, oh my gosh, you guys, this book was so good. I was expecting to enjoy this one. I wasn't expecting to love this one, and I did love it. Was Wish Upon a Cowboy by Jennie Marts. This is another contemporary romance. It is book number 4 in the Cowboys of Credence series. Published in 2019, it came out in November. Average Goodreads rating of 4.34 stars, guys. I gave it 4.5 stars. For my challenges, this was for my Triple RC for number 6, which was Marooned Without a Compass Day, which is to read a book where the characters end up getting stranded somewhere because of a snowstorm or, you know, what have you. That kind of a trope, if you will, in romance. And in this one, it mentions it on the back of the book, and I'm glad it did because I would have never known, because the whole stranded in the storm scene doesn't happen until like the 75% mark in the book, and it doesn't last more than a chapter, so it's a very small aspect of this story. But this is this. Oh, and before I continue, special thanks to NetGalley and Sourcebooks, the publisher, for sending me an e-art copy of this book to review for you guys. So this is the story of Harper and Logan, and oh my gosh, this story was delightful. So Harper has just been released from county jail. She was not in prison. She wasn't in maximum security federal prison. She was in county jail because her mother, who is not the most upstanding citizen, was pretty much skimming money from an employer that she was working for. And Harper unknowingly was doing the books. She had no idea that this is what her mother was doing, but she kind of got caught in that aspect. And when she was taken to jail, she called her mother-in-law and asked, "Can you please come and pick up Floyd," which is her son. So the grandmother came and got Floyd and took him from where they were living in Kansas to Colorado, which is where her mother-in-law lives. Now, Harper's husband died a few years earlier in a motorcycle accident. He was serving he was military and was serving overseas and survived that and came home. And then one night was going out for a quart of milk and ended up getting into a motorcycle accident, and he passed away. So Harper is now out of jail. She has nothing. She has no money. and she had enough to get a bus ticket to Credence, Colorado to try and get her son back. So she is now in town, but she kind of wants to have some stability before she goes and gets Floyd. You know, she wants to have a job and a place to live, even though she plans on going back to Kansas because she owns the house that her grandmother lived in. And right now it's being rented out to a college student. So on her very first day there, her first day off the bus, she ends up at this diner, which is where the bus drops them off, and befriends one of the waitresses at the diner. And in that same time period, Logan is living on his ranch by himself. He used to live there with his dad and his sister, but his sister got married, I guess, in the previous book. I have read the second book in the series. I have not read the first, and I haven't read the third, but I have to go back and read those ones. So his sister got married and moved out. And his dad has gone to stay with his uncle who has suffered a heart attack. So Logan's on his own, and he's not the best housekeeper in the world. So he's hired a couple different housekeepers, but none of them work out because all of them want to just get with him and not necessarily clean his house. So as we're meeting Harper at the beginning of the story, we're also meeting Logan as he's kicking out his newest of the housekeepers who is not working. So the waitress who met Harper is like, hey, there might be a job for you. So she takes Harper up to Logan's ranch, and the two of them meet, and she ends up getting hired to be his housekeeper, essentially. So as the story progresses, you find out more about Harper and Logan and their own each of their backstories, along with a very slow burn romance, and I really, really liked that. It takes place, I mean, it's not slow, it takes place over a number of weeks, but it's really great. And then there's the whole aspect of Harper trying to get her son back from her mother-in-law, who is not letting him go, is like trying to now get custody of him and, you know, keep him, essentially. And you kind of understand her reasoning why, but I really started to hate the mother-in-law. I wanted to yell at her. You know, do you ever get that when you're reading a book, that there's a character that you just want to yell at and be like, no, you can't do this, you know? And then Harper starts to doubt herself, and, you know, it was very sad for her. But all in all, a really, really great story. There is adult content in this one, so do keep that in mind. A little bit higher on the spice meter, but still really, really good. Great small town Christmas story, involves a cowboy. You know, I mean, what's not to love about this one? Logan and Harper had such great chemistry right from the onset. They had such great banter back and forth, like they had known each other forever. And I loved that. They weren't dancing around each other, you know? And that's what really made me believe in the relationship, because they just seemed so well suited for each other. Like I said, like they knew each other forever. So yeah, highly recommend that one. She is a lesser known author, Jennie Marts, but I absolutely recommend that you check out her books. Maybe start with the first one in this series and work your way through it. That's my plan for maybe next year, is to get to book 1 and 2 at some point. But yeah, highly enjoyable. Absolutely recommend this one. So anyway, guys, that is all that I have for this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them. And what was your favorite book that you read last week? Because I'd love to know that too. And until my next video, everybody, take care and happy reading. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye, guys.